Hi, my name is Marie. Thank you for joining me here. I'm the artist behind Studio DLL. Today I'm going to be painting Lily lounging. So of course, as you saw, I started with a wood canvas. It's a wood panel canvas. I started with a dark gray paint, which I had mixed in the beginning of this video. And I just used that as the base for the canvas. The reason I used gray was because I knew that I wanted to have a lot of gray tones in this painting, because as you can see in the background, it's a wood background, and the wood is painted white with browns and grays, those tones. After I painted the background, I went in and, of course, since acrylic dries so fast, I was able to almost immediately go in and create a silhouette of Lily, of where I wanted her to lay on the canvas. I do this freehand, I just eyeball it and I kind of give a general shape. I don't really think very much about this process in the beginning, because everything can be painted over with acrylic. Acrylic is a very layerable paint, and I really enjoy that about acrylic. It's fast drying, so I don't have to wait a couple of hours or a couple of days. However, it's not like watercolor, where I have to remember to keep the whites blank, the lighter colors blank towards the end. I can more go in and just layer over one another and see how the paints are able to interact as I go on. And I can continuously color correct and tone correct as I continue the painting process. Speaking of tones, here I am going in with some more tones. I had the base kind of butterscotch color over that silhouetted guideline I had painted, I guess you could call it. Then I went in with some nice midtones, because I wanted to show myself where those highlights would be, where the sun was interacting with her fur. She had a very shiny coat. Very beautiful dog. So as you can see in this painting, I'm going to have to almost make her shine like as if she was laying in the sun, which is what was happening in this picture, in this photo. You can see me kind of trying to make sure that you guys can see what I'm doing. And basically, I just keep going back and forth from the picture to my canvas, and I look back and forth. It's quick looks, kind of like when you're driving and you need to turn somewhere or something. You do those quick looks. So similar thing, and it kind of helps you to see if not only the tones are correct, but if the proportions are looking right, because proportions can be very difficult. Just as difficult, if not more difficult, than tone work. Because tonal work, you can kind of go back and forth and see and understand, okay, this has a more green undertone or what have you. But Since I'm working with grays in the beginning and just simply allowing for the tones to be in the backdrop of what will be this painting, I'm just allowing myself to layer. The reason I used gray as opposed to black for the background was because, one, I wanted more depth in the painting. I didn't want it to be as matte or as flat as black might have made it, because the black I'm using here is, I believe, Mars black, and it's very, very flat. But the other reason was because I wanted to be able to see the darkest tones and the lightest tones equally. And that wouldn't have been something I would be able to do if the canvas was pre-painted black. I would have had to go back in and paint only highlights as opposed to lowlights in the beginning, and then go back in with that dark in the end to kind of really get the details of the shadow. But here, since I painted it gray, I'm able to see every step and do every step in the order that I prefer to do it. Again, you can layer acrylic paint, which is really nice. So here I am just correcting that shadow. I saw that there was a beautiful almost V, kind of curved V, like a laid down V shape, like when you open up a book and you let it lay and it's not flat. So that shape, I wanted to make sure I had those correct shapes. That's kind of how I see anything that I'm creating. I want to make sure that the shapes are right. I'm not looking at it as if I'm painting Lily. I'm looking at this as if I'm painting shapes and tones and colors. So I'm just making sure that especially the tones and the shapes are looking correct or looking accurate. Now this painting was a bit smaller than what I'm used to. I will paint really small paintings, but I prefer to paint larger paintings, especially of animals or of people. I really like having a lot of space and being able to correctly portray them as they were or as they are. So for this one, since it was smaller, I did use my smaller brushes, which barely get any work anymore. They used to when I was learning. Most of these are from when I was first learning and first trying to understand how to get those details in. One of the other things you're going to see me do a lot is use kind of my finger as a smudge, kind of, to kind of soften any brush stroke that I feel is a little bit too exact or too, how would I say this, not correctly portraying the shadow or light. And of course, like with anything, with art, when you're able to layer on top of each other, especially with things like acrylic or oil, it is amazing when you're able to see the midtones and then go back and forth and create all this beautiful depth. But the one thing you have to remember with that as well is midtones are very important, but so are those lights and darks. To be honest, acrylic has always been my favorite. I first learned with watercolor how to paint, and when I was very young, I swore I'd hate painting. I was like, oh, it sucks, it's difficult, you can't control anything, and all of this stuff, right? I hated it. And at first, I started with watercolor, and then when I finally understood watercolor, I kind of fell in love with it, and then I started learning about acrylic, and I was like, oh, this sucks. This is I kept going through the same mode over and over and over again. I started with watercolor, then I went to acrylic, and then oil, and each time I was learning a new paint, I hated it. And I thought, oh, this is dumb, this sucks, you know. How am I gonna learn to create these images that I see in my head or that I see before me that I printed out if I can't control these medias? But as you learn and you go into it and you remember to forgive yourself because you're human, you actually become more skilled, and you see that it's not impossible, that all along you just were very unforgiving of yourself and not realistic. Because if you're being realistic with yourself, you're going to understand that whenever you learn something new, there's going to be a learning curve for everything. This is one of the first videos I posted on YouTube, and I'm learning a lot about how I should edit and what is more efficient and what is a higher quality video, and just exposing myself to more creators that are creating this kind of content where they are painting and creating for you all. That has been a game changer. So you have to do the same thing with art. You have to allow yourself to see what techniques are out there, what people are doing. Someone else could paint this exact portrait of this dog, of this exact stance, you know, and of this exact laid down position and everything, using the same photo. It'll look completely different, and those methods are going to be what changes the outcome, but it will still be Lily lounging. Now with the background, I had a lot of choices. I could go in a lot of different directions. And at first I thought, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna make this exactly how it looks. But I like to have a little bit of kind of a funky twist on whatever I'm creating, because I do lean towards realism. But I enjoy working with the materials that I work with. I like painting and feeling like I'm playing with the paint. But this is something that I like to do, is create a realistic piece of imagery and then use a very stylized background or shading technique. With my pen and ink drawings, you'll see that I really enjoy stippling and cross-hatching and hashing. They're not necessarily realistic, hyper-realistic drawings either, right? But they lean toward realism and they give a fun twist, kind of how I see it, right? And this is kind of how I see this image. I more relay what I am seeing and feeling rather than what is necessarily right in front of me, which is also a beautiful thing to do when you're an artist, is give parts of yourself with the imagery that you create. And it's not really something that we can decide not to do. It is something that we have no control over. We will definitely always give parts of ourselves when we create. And this is a good thing. So I was able to do that with this background. Lily is a dog I miss greatly. I'm amazed at how long she was with us, and I loved her as my whole family did. We really do miss her as a whole. And so with the background, I was trying to create a more dreamlike feel for it. Not wispy and heavenly, but dreamlike. Something that I would have dreamt. With Lily in all this detail, because that's where my eyes would have been. Not what she was laying on, not the wood beneath her, not the sun on her, but her. So I was able to give even more of myself by portraying this and showing this through the background. And I really enjoyed being able to do that. I also thought that with this almost stylized direction I was going in with the background, that it would feel more like she was the centerpiece, not the wood, not the day, her. So that's another thing when you paint or create, you want to make sure that you're allowing for your centerpiece to be your centerpiece. You can have a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. You can make it very, very hyper-realist, you know, you can go into realism like crazy, but to separate, to make sure the subject is the subject, is also so important in art when you're learning. So of course now I'm going to go back, and like I had said in the beginning, I started with a lot of gray tones, and there was a reason. One of the methods that I really enjoy looking at and watching others do is this method in practice in oil painting a lot, where you start with tonal work and you concentrate on that and you fully flesh that out and you make sure that the tones are correct. And then you go in with a kind of like an overlay. The word is escaping me now, but essentially it's semi-transparent. The color is there, but it's not going to completely cover your work. It's going to go over it and interact with it. And that's what I wanted. I wanted that same kind of effect for this painting. And I knew that it was definitely something that could be done with acrylic. And when looking at her, after I'd finished the background, I wanted to make sure that she did indeed look like her butterscotch gold tones, because that's what she was. She had this beautiful butterscotch coat. And so I decided, okay, I was going to start with those gray tones, get all the tone work correct, make sure that all her muscles, the way that her arm was outward towards the left, the way that her other arm was tucked in underneath her, that all of that would be right. And it would be shown. And then I was going to go back in with this beautiful butterscotch color that I have. It's not called butterscotch, but it's what comes to mind when I look at it. It's beautiful to me. It's like a brown gold. Or a gold brown. I don't know how you would explain what it is. Anyway, so yeah, I painstakingly went through and I made sure that she was covered in that to give the illusion of that color that she had. And of course it was a little difficult because I had to go back and make sure that, you know, I hadn't covered any of her white spots or hadn't gone out of into the background because I'd already finished that. So now, of course, I'm going to have to go back in, and I went in with a very bright white. It actually has this kind of like shimmer in it. It has like a, not glitter, or I guess very fine glitter in it. and it creates almost a reflective, like it interacts with light really beautifully. And I thought that that would be something that would show more how her coat interacted with the sun, because when she, you know, when she would go out into the sun, her whites would shine on shimmery really beautifully, and then she would have also like these gorgeous highlights on her fur, where her butterscotch fur was, right, where her brown fur was. That's why I had these gold lights, these gold highlights as well, because she shined in the sun. She really did. She was the most beautiful dog. And as you can see, the highlights, I could have left them very clumpy and, you know, together, but I, again, smudged them out. So then, of course, I have to sign my work. And in the back, I also put all the details. And yeah, this is Lily lounging. Thank you so much for watching. As always, please let me know if you have any questions or comments. I would love to answer them.